This lecture is Lucifer, adversary versus bearer of light, as seen through the mystic rectangle of Scorpio, Taurus, Pisces, and Virgo. Now, it's a kind of a hot topic. It's not one that's real popular. Yeah, pun intended. Actually, the center of hell, according to Dante, is ice cold. Has anybody ever read that, the Inferno? So, how many people are familiar with Jeffrey's work on Lucifer? Keep them up for a minute. I want to see. We got about half the people. That's how I came to get into this work, was through him. I went to his workshop, an all-day thing. He also did a lecture at Astro 2000. The last Astro 2000, I don't know if that's the reason it was the last Astro 2000, but that's how I came to be into this. When Kim, is Kim in here? When she asked me to do a talk, I thought I wanted to do one on music. Neptune and Venus are related to music, and how we can spiritualize through music, and that's what came to my head. And then all of a sudden, this kind of came back. I had kind of been seeded with the idea last spring about this mystic rectangle. And I kind of couldn't get away from the idea, much to my own chagrin, as Jeffrey would put it, or his own horror. So you can imagine kind of what I've been going through. If you're familiar with Jeffrey's story about the first time he talked about evil, no. That was during the Pluto school. Were you at that one, Kristen?
Oh, no, I wasn't there, but I did the hotel incident.
Right, okay. I don't know what year it was, but it was the first time he was actually going to bring this into his own work. And the night before he was to give the talk on Lucifer and evil, he was asleep and he had, the candle burning at night. And all of a sudden he said, the room turned ice cold. He was lifted off the bed with really cold arms, and the candle was lifted up at the same time and thrown on the floor. He was thrown on top of it. Things were going on fire, and what it did was carve, the broken glass, an upside down J on his knee, and what words came into his head is, we're going to bring Jesus to his knees. So, I kept thinking of that all night last night, okay? Or as I was getting ready to do this, but I was divinely protected. I've had a few experiences of my own with this energy, and I was going to sleep one night. One of my big things is the right work, and I was concentrating on that in my own head and trying to, that's where my own life was. And I was kind of lying on my side, and all of a sudden this really ugly face appeared in black and red and yellow. It says, I'm going to keep you down. You're not going anywhere. And I literally took my elbow, and pushed. And for 2 weeks afterwards, I had a sore elbow. Even though there was nothing there, it was very strange. So, Rose is still in here. Yesterday, Rose talked about the transition of the ages and how the planetary energies intensify, and that's true of Lucifer right now as well. It's very, very strong because we're moving from the Pisces age to the Aquarian age, and Lucifer wants to keep things as they are. Anytime we go to make change, whether it's just psychological, personal, whether we want, or if we want to know God, that's where Lucifer will manifest, in spades. Okay? Most of the time we would rather hide from this. How many would really rather not know? How many of you are sitting here out of morbid curiosity? That's a good, honest answer. How many have faced something like this in their own life, where we're stopped? You really know the energy then. It's a tough one for people, I think. Um, it's easier to deny it, do the Virgo denial thing, that God would create such a thing in the first place. That's a tough one to understand. But nothing can exist that isn't from God. Did you have a question?
No, I was just saying to her, I have a lot of Virgo in my chart, and as I do, I go around with this idea that the universe is only filled with love and light.
Uh-huh. Well, I think we want to.
Yeah.
Have you had an experience that tells you otherwise?
I haven't, not yet. Not really.
Okay. Oh, that's neat. So anyway, nothing can exist that doesn't come from God, and so that has to include evil itself. One of the reasons that we do like to deny that evil or Lucifer exists is because if we acknowledge it, then we have to face that it's part of us. And most of us would rather not, think we have that within us to do anything, whether it manifests outwardly or inwardly. But all possibilities, of course, lie within the realm of creation and have from the beginning of time. So that includes evil. Now, God did not actually create Lucifer as evil, if that helps. That was Lucifer's choice, to separate from God, to do what God asked Lucifer to do was to serve Virgo humanity. Lucifer said, no way, I'm not doing that. And my understanding from Jeffrey is, with archangels, when they refuse the job, the task given to them, then they are expelled by God, which is we kind of expel ourselves by turning down what we need to do. But in this case, God said, out of here. So now that leaves Lucifer feeling like a victim. In true victim mode, he's going to blame the human beings he was supposed to serve. Okay? Now, if he blames them, then he's going to bring human beings down with him. It's kind of like misery loves company. I went down, you're coming with me. Now, the neat part is what we all know about the dual desires of the soul, one desire to return to God and another desire to separate from God. Lucifer, as small as it may be, still contains a desire to return. At any point in time, should Lucifer decide to accept the responsibility for his own actions and repent and desire to know God and God only, then of course God, being the loving and forgiving God that she is, would accept Lucifer back. Now that's the neat part. Now, how big of a possibility that is, who knows? But it's there, like it is within each one of us. And in that case, as we know too, people have made contracts with evil. If you're not familiar with that, and this is really a hard one for people, we like to think, and I think of you, of everything being love and light, and how could God possibly, create something that this can't be changed? Well, within that, if Lucifer decides to go back to God, it can. But until that decision is made, there are people who will make a contract with evil. This will happen anytime a soul feels powerless, or it really happens when they get to the point of victimization for whatever reason. Feeling powerless, feel like they're lacking, feel like nothing's working, feeling like they can't get out of wherever they are. This is really where Lucifer will get in, and people will form a contract to gain supernatural powers. And that's exactly why it can't be revoked. Is, how many of us, if we get into a bad situation, okay, I'll make this contract for this lifetime and this lifetime, and then I'll give it up. When I'm ready to and I have what I want, then, I'll just cancel the contract. And it can't be done. If anybody has a hard time with that, let me know. It is a tough one. Yeah, Kitty.
At what point does it become a contract, a formal contract? Is there a certain word? No, we all get frustrated. I can't get it out. What if an awful tough thing puts you into that, state and you didn't mean to make the contract just because you were in that moment?
Inadvertently, it's still a choice. It's still a choice. It is a conscious choice.
It's so nice to say, I am now making a contract.
Yeah, because you're given, the power to get out of where you are. The only thing is, evil will promise power. I mean, it looks so attractive, and then you find out it's the opposite thing afterwards. But yeah, it's always a conscious choice. There have been people who said, I'm afraid I made a contract. Well, if you're afraid, you probably haven't. That's where it is right there. But that's a really good question, because I think most of us have experienced something like that, where we really feel like we can't make progress in whatever way or, that's specific to our life. And we might be afraid that did happen, especially if things turn around. Well, what's happened here? I mean, it's kind of a frightening thing. Does that answer your question? Okay. So it's, can you think, Kitty, have you felt ever victimized by anything? Is that what?
No, I mean, I just remember when I was learning at Jeffrey's school and he was talking about it, it just bothered me that you were cognizant, like where was the grace of God, where was forgiveness, and I had a lot of correspondence with him over that.
Right.
Just as you were saying that now, it triggered to me, at what point does it actually become a formal contract? Because we all get either very low or very angry and say things. And
Exactly.
what is where it is irrevocable, what we did or said?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's where we say, okay, to evil, to Lucifer, you have me. I'm yours.
So is it just a possibility that someone just may have just taken on too much and they just can't get through to the other side of it as far as they come in with a contract to experience and go through a certain amount of something and it ends up being that they bit off more than they can chew? Is that, then you can kind of turn toward that accepting of evil?
When you say they come in with a contract.
Well, I don't know. I guess I believe that we come in with certain contracts, that certain things that we're here to fulfill.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
And that maybe we just bitten off more than we can chew, and it just sort of
Well, we think we've bitten off more than we can
Right.
chew. Yes, exactly. And that can be where you feel so overwhelmed that you don't see the way out.
Okay.
And that is exactly where evil gets. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that we've made a contract in a previous life
Right.
and not
Yeah.
be aware of it?
My understanding is that you're still aware of it. But yes, once you've made the contract, it carries through from lifetime to
You
lifetime.
would have a conscious knowledge of that?
At some point, yes. Yeah. Yes.
You just said that you felt like there was a small part of Lucifer that could go back to God.
Mhm.
So it would make sense to me that the contracts are not irrevocable and that you could choose to go back to God too.
The contract is irrevocable until Lucifer decides to go back to God. That's when, then all the souls that have made a contract, their contract is broken. But you don't break it. As long as Lucifer maintains his own separating desires, that contract is valid. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, I don't agree.
Yeah, well, yeah, you don't have to agree with it. It's not comfortable. It really isn't. But, and I've heard Jeffrey say this so many times, he says, we don't want to think that way. Because most of us do try to come from a place of compassion and love, and we know that God is loving and forgiving. But it really boils down in simplistic terms to Lucifer's choice to say, I'm responsible for my own decisions, what I did, and I'm sorry, and I want to return. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
I have a question. We're talking about Lucifer as this energy, and now we're applying it to our astrological understanding.
Right.
What is Lucifer? Is this an asteroid, a planet? I mean, what are you looking at here?
Through the chart, an asteroid. There is an asteroid called Lucifer.
And how long has it been discovered?
No, I don't remember when it was discovered. The asteroid number is 1930. You can find it on Astrodienst, www.astro.com. You can also run an ephemeris through Jonathan Clark Dunn's site. And I don't have that memorized because I've got it on my favorites, and so I can just click through. But you can bring it up and actually run an entire ephemeris. And then what you want to do is just copy it to a word processing program so you can print it out. Did you have a question, Mary?
No, I just wanted to make a comment.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're talking about is a consistent response rather than, it sounds like people are thinking, ooh, if I'm dipping this way on this one decision or I feel really victimized, maybe I'm contracting. I think what you're talking about is a consistent response where the person is consistently going deeper
Right.
in that direction.
Exactly.
Which is
Yeah.
very different. It's also very interesting. I have some experience working with psychopaths.
Mm-hmm.
The research on psychopaths shows that psychopaths aren't just killers. They're not just serial killers and people who do really bad things.
Right.
There are lots of psychopaths in society.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of psychopaths in high positions. These folks, by objective measures, are different than we are,
Right.
which is an interesting phenomenon.
Oh, I'm
Because
sure.
you're talking about something that is very ill understood that operates in a very, very different way
Right.
than humans. And we all feel safe thinking that they're all locked up somewhere.
No.
They're quite among us.
Right. They definitely are. Yes.
Could I ask that everybody keep their questions to the end? Otherwise, we're going to get into a big debate on everybody's points of view on this article.
Well, unless you're confused about something, because I like people to be clear as we go. But that's a good point. I understand what you're saying. I understand. Let's see. We have the two places, and I'll get you that that other website address somehow. I think Maurice is online here, and we can figure that out. So you can run an ephemeris. So since we can be influenced by God, then we can also be influenced by evil, and it actually comes down to almost a 50-50 deal. It's actually 51%, 49%, give or take a few percentage points. In the end, God wins. Always, always, always. God is more powerful. That's the good part of that. Paramahansa Yogananda taught about evil as well. And he has such a neat way of putting things. Okay. I kind of dropped my voice. Thanks. Okay. Yogananda says, the truth is that God is using evil not to destroy us, but to make us disillusioned with his toys, with the playthings of this world, so that we might seek him. This is why the Lord himself permits injustices and evil. But I've said to him, Lord, you have never suffered. You have always been perfect. How do you know what suffering is? Yet you have put us through these tests, and you had no business doing it. We didn't ask to be born as mortals and to suffer. He doesn't mind that I argue with him. He's very patient. The Lord answers, you don't have to go on suffering. I have given everyone the free will to choose good instead of evil, and thus come back to me. So evil is the test of God to see if we choose him or his gifts. He created us in his image and gave us the power to free ourselves, but we don't use that power. Then Jeffrey, of course, made this available to us through evolutionary astrology, and he gave us Scorpio. Evil will manifest through Scorpio, 8th house, Pluto. And the other place is to look for Lucifer in your birth chart. Now, if you have a scorpionic signature, that doesn't mean you've made a contract. A lot of people say, this person has all this Scorpio, they must have made a contract with evil. And that, it can manifest through there. That is where it manifests through. But, that doesn't necessarily mean that it does or that someone has made a contract. I want to be real clear about that. So through those places, the Scorpio, Pluto, and the 8th house, or through Lucifer, it's where it can exacerbate our desires to remain separate from God or the source. And those desires to separate are only limited by our imaginations, Pisces. Through the polarity point of Pluto is where we can enhance our own personal desire, Taurus, to return to the source. Okay? It also can manifest through our feelings through Scorpio, and also manifest through Scorpio and Pluto in the 8th house through our feelings of powerlessness, our desire for power. It's where it uses our own emotional weaknesses that are intrinsic to us, to keep us separate. It's where it can distort our personal needs and desires through Taurus into selfishness. And through Scorpio and Taurus, it can really manifest through sexuality. This is a big place it really manifests, I'm finding. It can also manifest through the instinct to survive, through a myriad of possible behaviors or manifestations when one's life either is or appears to be on the line. That's where evil will manifest. So it's through these separating desires and our emotional weaknesses. These are really strong points. And that's really connected with the Scorpio archetype, emotional. That's the deepest emotions you can have when you think of Scorpio. And it's it's a water sign. And what seems like a paradox, where we are most emotionally weak, are our strongest separating desires. So you can see how Lucifer plays the two of them together to get you. Lucifer's intent is to separate. That's why it works so well with the separating desires. The intent is not to unify. That's why when you move back to God or just want to grow psychologically, emotionally, that's again where it manifests, because you're moving forward. You're attempting to unify, come back to the source. Since Lucifer made the choice, that Scorpio, Pluto, to not do what God asked him to do, serve humanity through Virgo. And I like to think of Virgo as the microcosm of the macrocosm. Sorry? It's hard. Everybody's so spread out here to get to. They didn't leave me a podium. So in our own cases then, determined by evolutionary condition, it's where we can choose to cooperate with God through our own service to humanity. And it really doesn't matter what evolutionary stage you're in. We all serve humanity in some way. Everybody from the garbage collector on up to the avatar has a position in society. And it's whether we're fulfilling that from God's point of view. Through Virgo, it's where we can deny our own motivations and intentions. So we've now got a sextile there between the Virgo and the Scorpio and Scorpio. It's through the denial of divinity within ourselves, feeling so small in the face of something so huge, and what unfortunately we've all been taught is perfect to this point, and how can we possibly ever be perfect? And so it can manifest through that. It can manifest through our desires to simply want to make changes, like I said, or to know God. It can be where we see only the problem, Virgo, rather than the solution, in Pisces. It can create doubt about what we can and can't do, and create crises. Having a Mars in Virgo, I know all about crises. It's also where we can keep recycling over and over again all our thoughts and feelings of being powerless, or ruminating over our perceived deficiencies, and thereby form relationships to something that symbolizes what in our own estimation we currently do not have and think we need. Also, through the connection through this mystic rectangle to overt forms of S&M sexual behavior. It can be any kind of self-undermining that keeps us from moving forward. So you see how I keep, to me this Virgo and the Scorpio are so related, with Scorpio being where we feel our limitations and powerlessness, and the Virgo, the lack. I think they're really intertwined in a way. They're similar, but just different aspects of the same kind of thing. So then between that and then our feelings of not having what we think we need, the Scorpio and Taurus, and our feelings of lack and imperfection, which is the Virgo Pisces, it can also be where we overestimate. And I think we've all met a few people like that too, and or become deluded about what and who we are and what we're capable of and what we're not. Within Virgo, there's that lack and the feelings of inferiority, but by the same token, there can be the superior feelings. I have a sister who has Pluto in the 6th house, and she's incredibly brilliant, but she will let you know it every step of the way. So that's her superior, look how smart I am. Pardon me? No, they don't. But I'm saying this is an opposite. It's actually Pluto and Leo, which maybe in this, but it's in the 6th house.
Right. Oh, that's right.
So again, this is where it can create the opposite reality intended, and that's a really important piece of recognizing this energy. Anytime you set out to do something to make changes in your life, and all of a sudden you find, gee, I went this way and kind of I ended up over here. How many have had that experience? Not too many? Wow. That's the dead giveaway that you're dealing with evil. It always creates the opposite reality intended. I thought about, yes?
Can that not also serve one's growth at times, being that sometimes we may have an idea of what we need, but that idea is not aligned with what we actually need? Can having an attempt to create one thing which is not actually what we need be fouled up, not actually serve us?
Let me make sure I understand your question.
We get what we need.
Right.
We don't always get what we want, but we get what we need.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Where, in other words, you've made this choice to go a certain direction, you're stopped from, is your question, and that could be because it's not the direction we're supposed to be going. So in that case, that comes from God, yes. So, but there again, you see how tricky it is discerning what's what. But if it's truly the direction you're supposed to go, it will work that way. If you're stopped and you regroup and align yourself with God, then it'll smooth your path. If you're really not supposed to, it won't. Does that make sense? Okay. I thought Mark talked last night about one of the things, being the thoughts in our own head, how we need to change those. I mean, that's such an important thing. And that comes back to the Virgo. And I thought of Milton in Paradise Lost. And I think he had the Virgo archetype really nailed down with, the mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. And that's, I think, what you were saying last night, Mark.
Yeah, it's very close.
Mm-hmm. That type of deal, and how we need to change those thought patterns. Yogananda also says, everyone has self-limiting idiosyncrasies. These were not put into your nature by God, but were created by you. These are what you must change. By remembering that these habits, peculiar to your nature, are nothing but manifestations of your own thoughts. The mystic rectangle is kind of like Lucifer coming from God, Pisces, into Virgo. And he manifests right at those crossroads, again, at the dual desires of the soul. We've got that, the Scorpio and 8th house, and then the Taurus, your own personal desires. So we've got that opposition, and then the opposition of the Pisces, Virgo, from God into the microcosm, and the serving God, and then the sextiles to between Virgo and Scorpio, and Pisces and Taurus, aligning our own personal desires through Taurus to what God wants for us, and serving humanity, and claiming our true power through Scorpio, not the stuff.
How does Pisces and Virgo relate to the mystic triangle?
Well, we're doing this, yeah, with those 4 signs. You've got, if you look at, I didn't have this up first. Maybe this will help. Does that help? Because we're going to overlay that on each chart. So it's not necessarily that you have to have planets in those signs. We can take where the signs are located in an individual chart, and we're going to get to that.
Can there be like a shift? Like, can it be like some other signs? And why is it Pisces, Virgo?
Just for this
Taurus?
particular energy. Yes, a mystic rectangle can be anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, but related to Lucifer.
Just
To Lucifer, yeah, right, right. I looked up the term of mystic in the American Heritage Dictionary, and it defines mystic as of or relating to religious mysteries or occult rites and practices. So that reflects Pisces, the religious mysteries, and the Scorpio, the occult rites and practices. And it also means inspiring a sense of mystery and wonder. According to Dane Rudhyar, the rectangle points in a certain direction. You know, it's different from the square in that it actually points in a certain direction. You've got that elongation, and presents a challenge for a particular kind of integration. The rectangular shape was used in many temples and chambers of initiation. And the buildings themselves were built to symbolize the process of transition from one stage of personal spiritual unfoldment to the next, the fulfillment of a great goal. So on each individual level, your own goal. Seen on the vertical plane, the rectangle becomes a door, something to pass through to enter a new realm. I really like that in relation to this particular mystic rectangle and what we're trying to do with good and evil. Dane Rudhyar came to call it the harmonic rectangle rather than mystic, and said one of the most practically constructive and spiritually harmonious possibilities of any rectangle is indicated when the 2 oppositions are linked by sextiles and trines. And I'm sure many of you have come to the same conclusion I have. Sextile and trine have been called easy aspects or non-stressful, but they can manifest in a very stressful way. If experiences of that? Yeah, I see heads nodding. Where fully active, this harmonic rectangle points to the potential development of a character strongly organized in an attempt to take an important step in personal growth and or spiritual development. So you see again where you're ready to take that important step, and we have again the good versus evil, so to speak. The configuration tends to bring the polarized elements symbolized by the oppositions into a unity because a strong sense of organization, the sextile, and a cohesive, purposeful vision, the trine, are potential in the personality. And there again, it's potential. Whatever tensions arise in the life or personality that are symbolized in the opposing planets, or in this case just the opposition by signs, don't necessarily go away, but they can be laid on the altar or channeled toward the concrete completion of a significant life task. And that's what we're going to work on when we get to this. So this is just one other way then I'm finding this mystic rectangle of shedding more light on the influence of evil and Lucifer, both as the adversary and as the bearer of light. through those archetypes. And I suppose that this is rather telling, but my own Lucifer is in Scorpio in the Virgo house. So here I am with these archetypes. What I started to observe then when I started working with this mystic rectangle is that Lucifer manifests itself as both the adversary and hopefully as the bearer of light when we superimpose the mystic rectangle formed by these 4 signs on an individual chart. You locate the rulers, and then you can see exactly what areas of the life are more likely to be affected by the energy and where it's likely to be more pronounced due to the connections through the oppositions and the sextiles and trines. Through the archetype of the bearer of light, we can see where we can link what we desire, including our desire to know God and our desire to return, what we need, what we love, how we serve, what kinds of symbols we align with, and osmos to God or Goddess through specific methods, Virgo, that help eliminate the emotional weaknesses. This is one of the things I came upon not long ago that I thought, okay, if we can just eliminate, if Lucifer gets us where we're most emotionally weak, and we can eliminate some of those, look how we've smacked that sucker. In a good way, mind you. So as, again, just like with the polarity point, within this mystic rectangle, the solution lies within the solution within the problem. We can change the messages in our own heads, where we can play the role of being our own alchemist, so to speak, and turn our inner lead into gold. And that, again, is indicated by the houses that contain these signs, specific to each chart. The other thing I found when I started examining this is that when the mystic rectangle actually becomes a total opposition, if you have, say, Pisces and Virgo on the 2nd and 8th houses, and then the follow-through from there, this really, really becomes pronounced because you don't have a spread out of, any other houses involved. And it gets, it'll get graphic, very graphic. So anyway, through this whole mystic rectangle, it encompasses our deepest emotions through the Pisces and the Scorpio, and our feelings through Taurus, and the thoughts through Virgo. And it's those areas, those exact areas where Lucifer's most invested in influencing us and keeping us separate or keeping us from moving forward. Luckily, we have the mutability through Pisces and Virgo to move beyond the rigidity and the fixity of the Scorpio and the Taurus. So I think that was kind of neat, to have those particular energies working within this particular mystic rectangle. It can actually become the door through which we pass into a new realm. And through a technique that we're going to learn at the end, hopefully. Oh, good boy. We're going to learn how to eliminate some of these blockages. Flash 20 minutes. Okay. If we take. Okay. This is a female client who was born in Quito, Ecuador. I'd put her in 3rd stage consensus. She's like on the verge of 1st stage individuated. Sorry, whoops, get back here. If everybody can see that. She grew up, of course, until she was 9, she lived in Ecuador, Catholic religious conditioning. For all those familiar with how we set that up with Jeffrey's work. When she was 9, the mother left the father, returned to the United States. The mother was American, the father's Ecuadorian. And she was 9, her younger brother was 7 when they came back to the United States. Okay, you can see this is one of those charts with Pisces on the 8th house, Virgo on the 2nd, her Taurus is on the 10th, Scorpio on the 4th. She was 9 when they moved back here. At the ripe old age of 9, she started drinking.
Started what?
Drinking. She became an alcoholic. She got into drugs. This is in a previous life with that Pisces on the 8th, ruled by Neptune, retrograde on her south node. She died of a drug overdose in a previous life. I had this vision of her like in opium dens from a prior lifetime. When she was 15, she asked her mother to put her into rehab. So she knew, you know, some part of her, whether it was recognizable, you know, or conscious or not, she knew she was in trouble. The time that she was from 9 until 15, and here's where we get back, you know, with the sexuality. You look at that, well, she's got Venus and Gemini, but in the 10th, but it's conjunct her Taurus moon. She would go down on guys for drugs. I mean, this is such a young teenager, but this is, you know, she had a lot of displaced emotions. If you look at her 4th house, her father would promise her the world. He'd be out at night, I'll be home in time to tuck you into bed. He'd never show up. So she got used to, you know, males telling her one thing, another thing happening. So she's obviously looking for something, you know, that wasn't fulfilled in her childhood. She's got displaced emotions out the wazoo. She also has 5 planets retrograde. She's going to do a lot of repeating this lifetime. But you see now how it influenced her, how she fell into the sex, the drugs, the alcohol. Through this influence, it became highly pronounced. Hopefully we don't have too many 9-year-olds drinking. She has a neat mom, but the unfortunate part is there's kind of a symbiotic relationship with the mother. If you look at that Venus and Taurus together, or Venus and the moon in Taurus, the mom has her own set of displaced emotions, and they're friends and buddies, but she really needed her mom to be a mom, you know, in those critical years, not a buddy and a friend. So then she goes out seeking, you know, to kill the pain, the loss of the father. Well, it was probably a good thing they moved away. There's still, you know, those unfulfilled promises. And so it was through the drugs again, and this is where it had gotten her before, that she fell into this. Now, she did clean up her act. She went through rehab. She stayed clean for a year. And she went into the army, and she started drinking again. So this is going to be like a repeating, you know, theme. With that Neptune on her south node in retrograde, this is going to be a lifelong battle for her to get out of this. You know, she's obviously got a lot, you know, with that Aries sun, she's out there going for it. She's an incredibly likable girl. You know, very, very outgoing, very charming. The other problem is she's a compulsive liar.
Excuse me?
Compulsive liar. When her prom came around in high school, she was going with a guy she had just recently met. They were all going to, I guess this is typical anymore, stay in a motel overnight after the prom, and they were going to an amusement park the next day far away. And she told her mom, we have the same room, but hey, we're not doing anything. And her mom, oh, this is where my sage mouth gets me into trouble. I looked at her, I said, and you believed her? You've already said, you know, she's a compulsive liar, and she's telling you she's spending the night in a motel with a man, and they're not going to do anything. Okay. So that's her mother's own denial. She wants to see the best in her child, as we all do, but it really didn't do her any favors. But you see that emphasis on the sexuality, and she did end up marrying the guy. He was in the Marines, she was in the Army. He's still in the Marines. They both had affairs with other people, even though they were engaged. She ended up with a kind of herpes that I guess can turn into ovarian cancer. And she told him about it, and he was in a rage because she decided she had to have given it to him because she knew she was sleeping around. It was only after they were married she found out he gave it to her. They're still married. We'll see where that goes. But you see the deception here on both parts, how she deceives and how she attracts the deception. And through the sexuality. It's really stunning. It's sad. It's sad.
Were you going to overlay something on?
Yeah, if you want to see, exactly how that's done. If you take, let's see here, here's Scorpio. What you want to do, because we've got a little bit of Scorpio in that house. See? So you've actually got a couple houses. When you have, whether it's on the cusp or not, like it starts in the third house or Scorpio.
How are you discerning where to put the?
This is where the signs are.
Virgo.
At the beginning of
the Virgo in the chart. That makes sense to you?
Yeah.
So you always position it at the beginning with the Virgo.
Well, wherever it happens to fall, that just we picked Virgo to start with. It's going to line up with the Virgo, Pisces act, wherever that falls in the chart, and then the Scorpio and Taurus. Is her Lucifer? I looked this all up and decided I wasn't going to include it because this kind of speaks for itself and I wanted to get away from. But definitely a Lucifer is going to add to that. Absolutely. Yes. Did you have a question?
I'm sorry, that rectangle, do you line up at 0 degrees for all 4 of the signs?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So wherever they fall. Now we can put this on there if you want. But it kind of detracts. If you know how this works with the rectangle on there. This is another case, okay, we're going to have to make this really quick, that happens to have the Virgo Pisces on the 2nd and 8th house again. Third stage consensus on border of first stage individuated, female, white. I believe the religious conditioning was Protestant. I don't think it was heavy religious conditioning. If you look at, and Mark's going to get into this, I'm looking forward to this, the trauma with a Pluto-Uranus, and she's got it in the 7th house. This is a person who's totally going after relationships out of feeling like such a piece of shit, that's the only way is to look outside of herself and get it. And this became very bizarre. This is a person who we've got North Node here in Gemini, ruled by the Mercury in Libra in the 8th, advertise for sexual relationships. No emotions involved. Saturn and Moon in Aquarius in the 1st, no emotional attachment, just pure sex. And she has children. Heaven only knows what's going to happen when they find that out. She joined Sex Addicts Anonymous and met a partner through that group of people. She got herself involved with this guy. This becomes funny in a strange kind of way. So they're both sex addicts. This is how they get together. She goes off to work. She leaves him at home sometimes at her house because she has to go to work. Well, while she's gone, he starts making 900 calls to a sex hotline. Runs her phone bill up, to something like $300. Well, not only does he make them to a sex hotline, check out where this Neptune in Scorpio is. It's international. And he's a Sag. I had to laugh. It wasn't very appropriate, but it was too funny for words. Sagittarian, and he's making the international calls to the sex hotline. What she did was call the phone company and say, I didn't authorize these calls. And they did take it off her bill, but she chose to get revenge. She got the money back. He also paid her for the bill. She kept the money, he paid her, even though she got it back from the phone company.
Where was Lucifer when she was born? You know?
I had it, but like I just said, I didn't include it this time, just to keep, but it would add another dimension to it. But here it comes again through the sexual. This is really where I've seen it manifest a lot, is through the sexual activity. The sad part is she does have children. If they ever find out, what kind of disillusionment are they going to have with their mom for advertising? Unfortunately, and she's a really sweet person. She's very kind. She's very giving to other people. She doesn't know how to give to herself or accept it. And it happens so often. I had some more examples, but I gave you a sheet of emotional stuff there, because this is one way to take care of the emotional. It comes, the first time I saw this, it's called the Sedona method, and as soon as I saw that, I thought, New Age woo-woo, steer clear. But for some reason, I went back to this website and looked it up more, and I was really impressed. Harvard Medical School conducted a study using this, and they proved the validity of the effects of this method and stated it's a quick, easy, highly effective, yet elegant way to protect and expand one's sense of inner security and well-being. It helps people access their natural ability to let go of any unwanted thoughts or feelings on the spot. And I've been working with this. It really works very well. It's very simply, it's a way to eliminate or transform or release stressful emotions, the thoughts and the feelings, which are all now connected, with that mystic rectangle, so that you can access who you are naturally speaking and your own inner strength. It addresses also the positive emotions as well as the negative. And when you start with this, it's like, well, I feel so good about this. Why would I want to release it? The interesting part is as you release that, the feel-good thing, it becomes more of an inner feel-good, not an inner peaceful, joyful thing. So we're working with eliminating the stressful emotions and actually enhancing the ones that we consider beneficial. We can't really, and nor do we want to, eliminate our emotions. As Mark said, and I think Marisa said somewhere, and it's true, our liberation occurs through our emotional body. So what we want to do is heal that emotional body, not eliminate the emotions. And this really works very well. There are basically 9 emotional states inherent in all of us. Let me put this up so you can write this down. Try to get out of the way so you can see it all. Apathy, grief, fear, lust, anger, pride, courageousness, acceptance, and peace. And they kind of fall along a line, of energy and action, with the first one, apathy, leaving us with almost no energy and therefore, very little to work with in action. Each succeeding emotional state provides us with more energy and therefore increased capability to take action, which is, a Virgo type of thing. Eventually, this helps our little wave become one with the ocean, so to speak. It's important to work on releasing the emotions while you experience all 9. What they suggest is you start with apathy and work through all 9 of them. Is anybody familiar with this method, by the way? Okay, good. Have you worked with it? You like it? Cool. This is how we really attain true imperturbability and freedom in life. The subconscious mind, or that part of our mind that's like below the conscious, is similar to a junk drawer. We all have a junk drawer somewhere in our house. Some of us have a junk closet or a junk room. And that's where we've stashed everything we don't know what else to do with. We haven't know how to deal with it. Well, this is similar to that. We stash it away, and when it's stashed away, it remains unresolved. So this is a way of accessing what we haven't resolved within ourselves. Now, simplified, this is a simplified version. There's a whole book. It's called The Sedona Method. It was written by Hale Dwoskin, D-W-O-S-K-I-N. The handout I gave you is from that book, so it is copyright. I didn't put that on there, but I want you to know it's copyrighted material. So right now, if you look at that sheet, I mean, you can start with apathy. That's a good place, and you might think, I'm not apathetic about anything. The whole list there gives all kinds of ways it can manifest. Give yourself, allow yourself a few moments to remember the last time you experienced any one of these. And then give yourself a few minutes just to be with whatever feeling that memory brings up. Can everybody do that? Is anybody having trouble with getting there? Now, the first thing you ask is, could you allow yourself to welcome this feeling as best you can? It's a tough one. Could you allow yourself to let it go? Would you let it go? And whether the answer is yes or no at any part of this, it doesn't matter what the answer is, just go with it. There is no wrong answer. Okay, if you can let it go, when? You simply repeat this process a few more times, working through each one of these emotions, and you may have to go back over and over again. I think they suggest 9 times, something like that with each one. But you do it at least several times with apathy, and then you move on to the next one and work through. And it's a process over time, but it does release. Now what you've done is changed those emotionals, where you're most emotionally weak, the feelings that come before the emotion, we all feel one way and then the emotion comes out of that. And the thoughts that go around in our head over all that. And you see how we cut Lucifer off at the knees? I just love this. Do we have any questions? Yes?
One last question about those charts that you put up. Where would the asteroid Lucifer likely to be in yours?
Boy, that's a good question. I had one that I didn't get to, that I can show you, that I do remember where it was. And it was again in Scorpio. That was another one that really went through the sexual business again, and there we've got Scorpio in the 7th house. This person's Lucifer was conjunct his sun in Libra, and he felt like he had to relate to every woman on earth intimately. So that's where it came through there. Yes? They have not. I had one that was close to a contract that we weren't, but no. These people have not. This one was close to a contract as well.
This contract is like an agreement,
Right.
Like a verbal, it's an interaction,
Mm-hmm.
it's an agreement.
An agreement.
It's not something where somebody is just nuts and they go off and tell their family or something.
No.
Psychopath or something like that. It is
Right.
something where you come with face to face with Lucifer.
Right.
And you say, I'm giving you my power so that I can have more power.
Exactly.
Like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that similar, like you might have an altar at home and you pray to Mary or Jesus or whoever.
Right.
Okay, that would be like something the opposite of that.
Right. But we all have a contract with God, whether we intend to honor that or not. That's a given. Yeah.
But to have an altar and to pray is a conscious thing.
Right.
This thing with Lucifer is like a conscious thing.
Right.
It's not something where you're just a bad person.
Right. Exactly. It's a conscious thing. And what they will do once a contract has been made, and this is where all these charts relate to sex, is that's one way Lucifer attempts to snag other souls, is through the sexual act itself. You know, once you've made a contract, that's part of your agreement with evil, is to go out and recruit other souls. So, and that is one way, because, we osmose other people's karma through the sexual fluids, through all our bodily fluids. So, yes?
A couple of things. It sounds as if there's a lot of parallel connections between Lilith refusing to do. Anyway, both of which are asteroids. And you're speaking of these asteroids which are in your chart, but you haven't shown us the glyph. How we can learn more about these asteroids.
You know, and I don't have it. Let me see if somebody have a pen that I can borrow here. There is a glyph for, may I?
I'd like to see where these fall in your specific charts. I'd like to learn more about these asteroids. We're talking about asteroids, accessible references to these.
Yeah, this is the glyph for Lucifer. It's just a V with a line through it about a third of the way up. Yeah, well, you mean as far as learning more about the archetype itself?
Well,
or?
seeing where it falls in our natal birth chart.
Okay.
I have a chart made with all of the asteroids, not only Lilith.
Oh, right.
Lucifer. Where does this asteroid fall in our charts? Where is it now?
Okay, right now Lucifer is at 9 degrees of Aries,
Right.
as we speak. Astrodienst, are you familiar with that? www.astro.com. You can plug in something like 20,000 asteroids into your chart. You can't do them all at one time, but
Right.
okay. Then there's a Jonathan Clark Dunn site, and you know what? I'll put that in the yellow book. I'll tell you where. You may have to email me for it because I don't have it off the top of my head. But if you want to email me, I'll send you that site because you can actually look up Lucifer. The number again is 1930. And you can run an ephemeris for it.
1930 is a higher vibrational 4, the angle 4.
There you go. I don't know. There's everything always, interconnects. Yeah.
As a soul evolves, the notion of polarities
Mm-hmm.
start to unite into sort of more of a unified idea of the
Right.
So in the spiritual states, do we have a decrease of the perception of these polarized good and evil, or is there any...
A decrease, but it's still there. I mean, if you remember, Jesus till the end was tempted by evil. So until we're out of here, we'll be tempted. It's just as we get farther along, we're less likely to buy into it. Thank you all very much for coming.